Hello, hello. Welcome everyone, donors and supporters to our Vancouver Crossing Loop webinar. I'm very excited to have you all here today because what do we love more than anything but talking about new routes? And, you know, as all of you here have supported this route, we're really excited to have a small group audience. I wish that I could see all of your faces, but unfortunately, that's just not how Zoom webinars work. But Zoom webinars do allow us to have lots of people in a webinar. So great. While people are filtering in, as you're getting settled, we love to see where people are zooming in from. So if you want to put your location where you are right now in the chat, we would love to see that. Just as a preview of where everyone is from. Couple of reminders today. We have this chat feature over here. We also have a Q&A feature as part of this webinar. And just double checking. Yep, there it is. And if you have specific questions that come up for you while Amy and Josh are presenting, you can put those in the Q&A. That's just an easy way for us to separate questions versus like the actual chat, because you're welcome to like chat around with people, talk, do whatever it is you need to do in the chat. And then if you put your questions in the Q&A feature, that really helps us identify what's a question and what's just chatter. So appreciate you all for being here and for being supporters of adventure cycling and specifically of our routes. So I know that you're excited to hear about Vancouver. We have a fun little poll for you while people are coming in. So it's a pretty easy little poll, don't worry. Mostly we're just super interested in ACA routes that you have done. If you say yes in that poll, and you have done an ACA route, I'd love to see in the chat which route you've done. Oh, we got somebody from Sydney, Australia. That's amazing. Love seeing Missoula, Montana on here, representing. Somebody's done the Great Divide in Montana. Nice, Louise. Hello, Washington. Yeah, I bet we've got some interest from Washington. Right there next to Vancouver. Awesome. Looks like we're getting those votes coming in. Fantastic. Great Parks North. Very nice. Southern Tier and Atlantic Coast. Death Valley Tour. That's one place I'd like to see. Too many ACA routes to list. Wonderful. Pacific Coast. That's a big one. Awesome. All right, I'm going to end the poll so that y'all don't have to stare at it the whole time. And looks like majority of people who took the poll have ridden an ACA route. Love that you're here. Love that you're interested in more routes. And for those who haven't, maybe this is the one. Maybe the Vancouver Crossing Loop is the one for you. So as you can see, we had 15 people vote. Just want to show you sort of the layout there. Okay, let's dive in. So first of all, I'm Jessica Zeffers. I am the VP of Marketing Communications here at Adventure Cycling, and I help run some of our fundraising campaigns. So I'm so excited that we can do this for our supporters of our routes. Then let's see. Okay, so next I just want to introduce our presenters. We have Amy Wally, who is our cartography program manager. She has been with the organization for a stunning 10 years, and she developed this Vancouver Crossing Loop, as well as the soon-to-be-released Klamath Mountains Loop and Golden Gravel Trail. Josh, I'm sorry, Josh, Josh Bowden, the second one.
You got Bowden. It's Bowden. You got it.
Bowden, thank
Yep.
you. I should have checked ahead of time. Josh Bowden experiences operations specialist on our tours team, but he was also the lucky guy to be the route researcher for the Vancouver Crossing Loop. So in this session, Amy's going to be telling you the behind the scenes look at how the Vancouver Crossing Loop was made and created. And then Josh is going to share actual stories from his route research riding the entire loop. Awesome. So I already explained the Q&A process. Please put those questions in the Q&A feature rather than the chat. Just a note on recording, we are recording this webinar. For those of you who could not attend, we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel and sending out that link. I think actually we'll just send the link to all of our webinar registrants. So that you always have that. Okie dokie, I think that's all of my part. Amy, take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Amy, and I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about how the Vancouver Crossing Loop came into existence. So let me just get this set up. Okay. So the Vancouver Crossing Loop. So earlier this year, I was given the assignment to create a new route. And the only real directions I was given is we wanted it to be about a week long, and we wanted it to be a loop. So I was really given a lot of like free range to make a route kind of wherever and however I wanted. And one of the first things I did was I opened up a spreadsheet that the route teams has kept for many, many years called New Route Suggestions. And this is a spreadsheet where we write down all sorts of new like route ideas that people, when they call in, write in, email in, and they're like, hey, I've got this really great idea. This is where we write it down. So I started looking at that spreadsheet for ideas, and nothing was quite really fitting the bill for this like week-long loop tour that we wanted to do. So I kind of started looking elsewhere, and I knew that I really wanted this to be a route that used as much bike infrastructure as possible. So bike paths, bike trails, bike bridges. Like I just really wanted it to be, very bike friendly. And then of course I wanted it to be enjoyable. So that means, scenic, interesting, safe. And then I also just wanted this route to be considered beginner friendly. So not too much traffic, not too difficult, logistically easy. And then of course, fun. So I started looking at some rail trails across the country and trying to see if I could, start with a rail trail and then kind of try to use a part of it to make it into a loop. And I was looking at some on the East Coast, and I looked at one in Idaho, and the thing with a lot of rail trails is they're great, but a lot of them are very point to point. They're not loops. And so I was kind of struggling to make a loop out of, a good traffic-free rail trail. And then in the very back of my mind, I remembered there was a cool trail I had once heard of called the Cowichan Valley Trail. And this is a trail on Vancouver Island. And I had remembered, I think I had seen pictures of it, read about it somewhere. And I was like, yeah, this maybe I can, do something with this trail. And it's an awesome trail with a bunch of trestles, 74 miles long, really scenic through the forest in British Columbia. It's gravel. And so I pulled it up on a map. This is the open cycle map view on rideable GPS. And that big red line on the western part on Vancouver Island, most of that line is the Cowichan Valley Trail. And I was looking at this map, and I was looking at all the other bike routes in the area. All those purple and red and blue lines are all different bike paths and bike routes. And I was like, maybe I can make something out of this. So that was kind of where like the idea originated. So we know one of the first questions is where to begin. And so for most of our routes, we try to have them start and end in accessible, kind of logistically easy spots to get to. So kind of the obvious choices were Victoria or Vancouver. I decided to go with Victoria. And the route officially starts and ends at Clover Point, which is this bottom photo here on the right. Just kind of a spit of land that just juts out into the sea, just a really scenic kind of monumental place to start the bike route. But since this is a loop, you can obviously start and end wherever you wish. It just officially starts here in Victoria. And then I had to make a decision at first to go counterclockwise or clockwise. And I initially started mapping it in the clockwise direction. But then when I had kind of finished the first draft for a few reasons, I kind of decided that it would probably be a little bit better in the counterclockwise direction. And so that's kind of what we consider the primary direction on this route now. And it is also the direction that Josh researched it when he scouted. And one of the main reasons for doing it primarily counterclockwise is, especially if you start in Victoria, it saves the most scenic and the most challenging portion for last. But of course, you can ride this route in either direction. It does not really matter. So like I said, I really wanted this to be a route that connected as many traffic-free bike paths as possible. So there's a lot in this area, which made it fairly easy for me to do that. A couple I just will highlight. The Lochside Trail is a really awesome trail from Victoria to Sydney on Vancouver Island. Just really great trail through farmlands, forest, kind of residential areas. Just a really awesome trail. The Salish Trail is a really beautiful trail through Pacific Spirit Regional Park on the mainland near Vancouver, kind of near the University of British Columbia. The Spirit Trail is a great trail on the North Vancouver shore. The Cowichan Valley Trail, of course, really awesome rail trail. So like gentle grades through the forest, numerous trestles like towering through the trees, just really awesome. The seawall in Vancouver is a really cool kind of touristy trail, but really cool. It's like you're right on the water, and then like you circle. It's a one directional trail around Stanley Park. And then the Souk Hills Wilderness Trail is a really beautiful trail. It's kind of a southern continuation of the Cowichan Valley Trail, but it's no longer on the railroad grade, so it's not quite as smooth of grades, and that's where it actually starts to get a little steep, a little challenging. And then Josh will probably talk a little bit more about that portion. And then of course there are 3 ferries on this route, which is pretty unique to our routes. Not all routes have ferries. If you're from an area that doesn't have a lot of ferries, it's kind of a fun novelty thing that you get to do on this route. There's 2 bigger, longer ferries that are crossings across the Salish Sea to the mainland and back to Vancouver Island. And then there's a shorter ferry called the Sea Bus that just goes from downtown Vancouver to North Vancouver. I think it's like 15-minute little skip across the harbor there. And these ferries are, they're pretty cheap for what they are. They're not super expensive. They're very accessible. They're not logistically difficult. There's multiple crossings per day. I think the bigger ones are like every hour, and then the Sea Bus one is like every 15 minutes or something. They're not logistically difficult to fit into your day. The bigger ferries have cafes and food, and they pass through some really beautiful areas, like through the Gulf Islands. You sometimes see whales. I would say they're probably a highlight of the trip, and just kind of something a little bit unique that you don't get to do on every single bike tour. So for mapping the route, so I did all the research and mapping from my office here in Missoula. So I had to, use all the resources on the internet available to me. So I did a lot of researching and analyzing and reviewing like regional and local bike maps of like the metro areas, trying to find the best ways to connect some of these trails that I wanted to use. I looked at a lot of Ride with GPS heat maps to see where cyclists like are actually riding and commuting, and which roads are the most bicycle friendly. I'm a huge fan of Google Street View. I love to drop down into Google Street View, look around, especially when I'm several hundred miles away here in Montana, I can just really get a vibe of what it actually is like on the ground. And, I'm looking for shoulder widths, traffic levels, stop signs, just anything I can kind of see on the ground. Street View is super, super helpful for that. And sometimes it's as recent as a few months ago, so I can really see current conditions. I read lots of blogs, forums, reviews. I can go onto like All Trails reviews of some of these trails and read about how well these trails are maintained, what the surfaces are like, how enjoyable they are to ride, and just kind of, just get a feeling for what these roads and trails are like. I even watched some YouTube videos specifically of like the Sioux Hills Wilderness Trail. There's not Street View of that trail. And I really wanted to see like what the quality of the surface was like. Is this like a really technical mountain bike trail, or is this like a smoother trail that is possible to ride on like a gravel or a touring bike? And then I get to see more of like what the scenery is like. Like, is it shady? Is it sunny? Is it steep? Is it flat? Just anything that I can use to really immerse myself in the landscape without physically being there, I try to do. And then once I had the first draft of the route completed, I sent it to a tour leader of adventure cycling. Her name was Heather, and she actually lives in Vancouver. And so she reviewed the route for me and gave me some like insider tips about kind of change the route here a little bit, include this bike shop, include this museum or this point of interest, where to put kind of caution sign, like caution marks, like a little bit of heavier traffic right here. So that was super helpful. But overall, she was like, this looks great. She's excited to ride it. So yeah. And then, so a big part of creating, adventure cycling routes is balancing rider needs and wants. So on every bike trip, you need services, right? You need to resupply, you need to refuel. On this route, honestly, services were pretty easy. A lot of the route is fairly urban, so there's tons of bike shops, there's tons of restaurants, grocery stores, all that. Except for there's the last portion between Lake Cowichan and Langford is fairly remote, but it's only about 45 miles, I think. So very, very doable in a day. So services were pretty logistically easy on this route. And then safety, like I said, I really wanted this to be like a safe, beginner friendly, low traffic or traffic free route. So I was looking at, everything that goes into that. And then points of interest. I wanted this to be like a fun, enjoyable route that is really a vacation. So there's fun things to do on this route. There's lots of fun, interesting things to do in Vancouver, Victoria, and all the little towns along the way. There's, like you can see, there's Fisherman's Wharfs. There's Granville Island is a really like touristy hotspot in Vancouver with lots of restaurants and galleries and theaters and nightlife and stuff like that. So even though this route is designed to be done in a week, it's a route that you could really stretch out into 2 weeks even, and spend a couple nights in a couple of these places and really immerse yourself into the culture. And there's so much to see and do in a lot of places that this route goes through. So here's the final product. Let me move my face off the elevation profile. So this is what the final product of the route looks like in Rabbit GPS. There's all the services and points of interest. It is 246 miles long, plus the 65 miles on ferries. Overall, it's 60% paved and 40% unpaved with 11,000 feet of climbing. You see I stuck the elevation profile there on the bottom. The grayed out portions are the ferries, so that's why they are flat. And so you can see most of the route is fairly flat with a couple big hills. And then the majority of the climbing is that last portion, that last like kind of 60 miles is where the majority of the climbing and the majority of the gravel come in. Yeah, so the route is now available on Rabbit GPS through our website, and it is free to download. So anyone could go download it and check it out. And I hope you all get to ride it very soon. And that's all I got. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Amy. So Josh now is going to tell us all about his experience on the route.
Yeah, thanks, Amy and Jess. I'll have some pictures for everyone to look at. These are all pictures I took from my trip itself. But before diving into some of the stories of the trip and logistics, just talk a little bit about kind of like what a little bit of what Amy was talking about, of like what was it kind of like to scout the route based on her ideas of what she wanted it to be, and what was it like on the ground? Did those things match up? And also like what was it like for me to go and scout and be a route researcher? Um, to be really honest, it really felt like a vacation, but like with a purpose. It was obviously very fun. We all love bike trips here, but the scouting makes it a bit different in the sense of I'm looking at things from a different perspective of like I'm trying to identify like, what is the optimal route? What are some notes that we can give? If something seems a little unsafe or it's not quite as like Amy had expected from researching on a computer, I can give an update there. So I'm still having a great time on a bike trip, but like it gives that purpose to it of like knowing I'm going to make something that other people get to enjoy. And it really encourages like not just taking the easiest route possible. Like whenever I stayed somewhere in a town, I was trying to find the interesting local places to eat or somewhere like a local kind of like museum or other things like that to make it. It's encouraging me to get out and like seek those things out. Whereas maybe after a long day, I probably just want to take a nap or go to bed pretty early. But kind of gave me that spark of motivation I needed to get out a little bit more. And then I get into my kind of data-driven organizational side of like I have a spreadsheet I was writing notes on to Amy so that she could see it and apply those to the Route with GPS notes. And she left items for me in Route with GPS, pointing out specific places to like check and see what was going on there. And also on Route Researcher, we were wondering to kind of explain like why was I the researcher? Like, well, it makes me special. Part of it is, or most of it, honestly, is that I was right next to Amy in our office. We're like desk buddies. So I'd overheard her talking about this route. They needed someone to research for it, and especially they needed someone to actually bike it. So I was looking for any idea for a bike trip, and I just put my hand up and volunteered and said, "That sounds really fun. I'd like to go scout this route." So it was kind of a bit of convenience, but also that ingrained knowledge of like me and Amy, are near each other. We know like we work really well. I already kind of understand what she needs. Since I do guided tours for adventure cycling, I have an eye for what people are wanting on these things. I have a knack for logistics. So it all worked out really well. And of course, I love biking, so I fit that mold pretty quickly. Talk a little bit about this trip. What kind of like the pictures kind of go in order of the trip itself and logistics. So I can talk about that. I see there's some a question about like indoor camping and other things. Um, I'll say for my trip, I did all indoor stay. I did hotel to hotel. I honestly prefer to camp most of the time, but my life was a little chaotic at the time, and it was logistically easier to just go hotel to hotel, carry less gear, don't have to worry about grocery shopping, then have to like puzzle everything out. So I went hotel to hotel, which is very possible. Some areas it's a bit limiting on your logistics, but it's definitely doable. It's more flexible if you're camping, and I think hotel and camping is the way to go for this route for sure. But overall, I did it 8 days, and that's with travel. I had 7 biking days. One day was just driving. And this picture you're seeing at the beginning here with the bike rack, this is from the ferry from Port Angeles, Washington, which takes you to Victoria, British Columbia. Like Amy said, you can start anywhere, but if you want to start in Victoria, if you're not flying in, this is really the logistically easiest way to do it. Plus, Port Angeles is a very cool town, and the Olympic Discovery Trail goes right by it. So if you want to make an even longer trip, you can go to Seattle, bike all the way to Port Angeles, and then hop on this route. So there's a lot of interesting ways to get there, but this is the way that I did it. Ferry is also inexpensive. There's only 3 of them, for most of the year. So logistics are a bit tighter on this single ferry to get into Canada. But otherwise, it's very easy. The border crossing is not a problem at all. You just bring your visa and you're good to go. But as you can see on the bike rack here from the ferry, it's immediately bike friendly. They're ready for a bunch of bikers. There are a lot of people there, some people doing day trips, a lot of people doing overnights. You can see other people there with their gear. My bike is the one right here with the orange strap on the black panniers. That's what I was riding. So one part of the theme of this route is kind of the diversity of things. And one of them is the diversity of food and the amenities you have. So this was one of the delicious meals I had on the trip. The food was incredible the whole time. This was some type of local BLT. I don't remember what the purple part of the sandwich was, but gosh, it was really good. And this one was at a restaurant that was on the route itself. Like you go right by it, you can't miss it, called Mitchell's Farm Market. This is like a farm to table, except the restaurant is on the farm. So I was sitting there looking out over all the fields where the food I was eating was coming from. So it really doesn't get much more fresh than that. It was incredibly delicious. Also, like Amy mentioned, lots of ferries. So this kind of shows a little bit of the ferry, a little bit of the scale of them. Doesn't quite show it perfectly, but these ferries are massive. These are the ones that one of the 3 ferries you'll take in British Columbia as you're going around the route. These things hold tons of cars. There were cement trucks on them. There were tourist buses. Probably could fit easily a couple thousand people in these. There's a lot of amenities. There's like cafes and a cafeteria, and the food is actually pretty good. So my logistics required eating on the ferry, and I didn't feel like I was missing out. I still had a great time. So very, like Amy said, logistically easy. There's one of these every hour for the big ferries. The sea buses, even more. But the ferries are a highlight, and you really have a good time. You can go up on deck and do some sightseeing. You can stay inside and read a book, whatever you want to do, but it's a great time. So right as you get onto the mainland, you start in Victoria, you kind of go up the island a little bit, and then you hop on the mainland. This is one of the first sections of gravel that I encountered. Off to the right on the picture is the ocean. Off to the left was a bunch of farmland, and it was like this for 10 to 15 miles. So I had a nice salty air breeze. It was really good weather. It was probably 60s almost the whole trip. So just had a really spectacular time. And riding along this was just like a real nice welcome. Being in Montana, we get the fresh mountain air, but it's nice to get the sea breeze every once in a while. So that was good for me. This is further on the mainland, closer to Vancouver. As you can see, I'm on the bike path, the separated one that's like crushed gravel, really smooth. But off to the right is a paved road that honestly was also really quiet. So the route will keep you on the protected bike lanes, as that's the theme of the route. But you kind of have that option of flexibility that if you're just wanting to get on some smooth pavement and just kind of, recover a little bit after being rattled around on some of the gravel, you have some options every once in a while to kind of like pick your adventure here and pick your surface depending on what you're wanting at the time. I like this picture a lot because this is from a city park that is in the middle of Vancouver, and you wouldn't know it. It looks like you're way out in the woods in the mountains, dense, lush forest, Pacific Northwest forests. But I'm probably a mile away from a major highway, but it was dead quiet. So even though you're traversing this major urban area, Vancouver is a huge city, you can still find these places of quiet and solitude, and even a little bit of gravel, even though you're in the middle of a city. This is a nice, huge beach that was maybe 10, 15 miles outside of Vancouver. You get the nice view of the Vancouver downtown skyline from here. If you're there in the warmer season, great place to take a dip into the water. There's lots of places to get ice cream and snacks. I stayed here and ate some snacks and read a book for a little bit just to take a nice break and enjoy the skyline view. This is one of those highlights that Amy had mentioned. This is the Seawall ride in Stanley Park, right on the edge of downtown Vancouver. It's a like major park. There were tons of people, and like she said, it's quite touristy. Personally, I don't like to go to super touristy things, but this was one of the few I've been to that was definitely worth going to. I had a really good time. You just ride really slow. You're right there on the water. When I was on the loop, I actually saw an orca whale off in the distance, so I got to enjoy that for like 10, 15 minutes. Got to see my first whale in my life, which was amazing. So glad I got to do this. There's lots of beaches you can stay at, little places to get concessions and food and snacks. So a great place to really just slow down and enjoy this really unique space that they have built up in the city. Here's a picture from one of the ferries. You can see off in the distance on the left side of the picture is like some ongoing storms off in the distance, which made for a pretty dramatic crossing. So like Amy said, it's just beautiful terrain, especially if you've never been to this area of the country. It's so dramatic because you're there at sea level, but then you have these like multiple 1,000-foot tall mountains right there out of the water. Very dramatic, super pretty, especially with the storms kind of like heightened everything. So on my ferries, I spend a lot of time outside drinking coffee and just enjoying the nice like sea breeze and the views. So part of route researching is the route sometimes doesn't always work. This is from a section that originally was like going to keep us on gravel and stay away from major roads. But unfortunately, when you come across a danger, no trespassing excavation sign, that usually means we're not going to go there. And on the right-hand side of this, you can see a picture of that doesn't do that road justice. That was probably 6 inches or a foot deep of just loose rock and sand on a pretty steep hill. So I had just kind of trudge up that for, 20, 30 minutes or so just to get through. I talked to some locals at bike shops and other places nearby. And there was some lenience. They're saying, oh, they let bikers through here, but they want to keep the cars out. And it was kind of, it was kind of a local situation, but we want the route to be safe. That's a huge priority on our routes. So if it comes down to like we're going through this private land owned by a timber company, we're just not going to do it. We don't want to cross that boundary. We want to keep everything above board and safe. So this is an interesting place to go, but this will not be featured on the route. And that's exactly why we do route research. So we don't put you out there and put you in these bad situations. It wasn't bad. I still had a good time, but no one has to get out there and wonder if they're trespassing. And here is some of the Cowichan Valley Trail that inspired the whole route. It's very well signed, very well maintained. This part is a bit of pavement, but the surface, as you'll see, varies quite a bit as you go on it. It's really pleasant because it's separated from the world around it a little bit with these big trees and shrubs and hedges, which is really nice because you're going through these neighborhood areas, but you're kind of in your own little world, which is really fun to feel really protected and separated on a bike. It did make for some funny moments where I was saying, I'm going to stop at this gas station or this grocery store and grab some snacks in a few miles. And I would just go right by it because I didn't see it. I was just having too much fun running my bike and the bushes were in the way and I, missed a couple snacks. But I made it. I'm here and I'm fine. So maybe I didn't need those snacks. That turned out okay. This is another section of the Cowichan Valley Trail. Some like green pastoral farmland, a little bit of crushed limestone gravel. It's just very, very smooth sailing. This picture was taken on a day. I did a really big day because I like to do long days on the bike. So I was moving pretty fast. And if you need to get somewhere quick, you're definitely able to do that. But like Amy said, this route's kind of conducive to going slow. I just really like big riding days. So it's a personal choice of mine. And then this is getting towards that Lake Cowichan area of the Cowichan Valley Trail. This is that section that we had mentioned that is a little bit more remote and also a little bit more challenging. But when I hear something being more remote and challenging, I equate that to almost always more beautiful. This is one of those trestles that was mentioned. And there's my bike for people that want a more curious view of the bike and what I was riding. You really feel like you're out there, and actually here you are getting pretty far out there on really beautiful gravel roads that are really well maintained, and they do a good job taking care of these bridges. So the beautiful Pacific Northwest River. This is further down the Cowichan Valley Trail, getting a little more rugged, a little more remote. We're kind of down to a double track instead of like a full wide lane. But gosh, this is one of the most beautiful sections for sure. That moss is just amazing. I like this picture a lot because you can almost smell it. This bridge was created or finished maybe a week or two before I went on this trip. So you really had that like wonderful wood scent in the air when I went through. And then this is where we get to that Sook Hills Wilderness Trail that Amy mentioned. If you're going counterclockwise, this will be one of the last things you do on the route. And the left picture is another one of those where the picture doesn't do it justice, where I could not ride up that hill. It was probably 12% or more. I had to walk it. I was trying to ride everything, but I just couldn't do it, even with my light load going hotel to hotel. So like we said, it's the more challenging section, but it's absolutely doable. It's a very beginner-friendly route. I think it's just really good to know that like you will have to walk some of these hills. They're not very long. You're never walking for more than 5 to 10 minutes at a time, but the effort you're putting in will give you the reward of just beauty. Left-hand side is more of that double track. Just wonderful, beautiful, quiet, remote gravel riding that some of us out here love. And those were all the pictures I had to share. Talking a little bit about some of the like reflection of going on the trip. The theme of it really is just like diversity in the sense of like a diversity of terrain all the way from quiet country roads to busy city lanes, all the way to these remote gravel roads. Like you're getting a mixture of everything in your terrain. There's a mixture of cultures. Vancouver is one of the most culturally diverse places in the world. So you get a lot of that. I heard so many languages around me, which was a really fun thing to experience. Amazing food. The towns and cities you go through are diverse. So just like every day felt very distinct and different. I had everything from a city trip to a remote gravel riding trip. So even though it's just a week, it's just 250 miles, you're getting a huge experience. This is some big bang for your buck on the trip. And yeah, I guess we can dive into some Q&As. I see we very quickly had about type of bike and width of tires. The ever-present question on every bike trip, what bike are you riding? I'll back up here a little bit so we can see the bike. I rode an all steel bike. You know, people say steel is real. I say steel is real heavy is what that actually, the actual saying is. But it's a Surly Midnight Special, which is kind of an all-road gravel bike. I had 48 millimeter tires that had like a file tread, so not quite slicks. They're the Panaracer Gravel Kings, if people are familiar with that tire. I felt like this was the perfect bike for the trip, just because of that diversity of terrain. A road bike is not suitable for the gravel sections, and a mountain bike is not suitable for the road sections. So something kind of in the touring bike to gravel bike range is really good for this type of trip. You probably want to be running tires that are at least 38 millimeters wide. I like the 48 millimeter size. Worked really well for me. And nothing here is super technical on the route. Everything is pretty darn smooth. So you can see I ran like a rear rack with panniers, and that was absolutely suitable. I never felt like that was like ungainly or not right for the route. You definitely don't need to go with bike packing bags. So I really feel like I had the perfect bike for this trip. It was well suited. It's also my favorite bike. I've had it for years, so I'm a little biased about it. And it is, I've rode a, kind of classic analog bike, but this route is super e-bike friendly. You do need to be a little careful with the logistics on that last section, the 45-mile section between Lake Cowichan and Langford. But if you bring 2 batteries for your e-bike, you'll easily solve that. But the rest of the route is you're hitting towns and places you could charge easily every 15 to 20 miles. So you won't have a problem with an e-bike. So if that's what you're riding, I think that's awesome. I'm a big fan of e-bikes. Definitely do that. This is a great trip to take your e-bike on.
Thank you, Josh. We actually have someone who raised their hand, and I figured out just by playing around here in Zoom that I can allow this person to talk. And so now we have like 2 hands raised. Maybe Pam, I'll click allow to talk. You can ask your question, and then we'll go back to like a question in the Q&A. Does that sound good for everybody? Cool, great. Okay, here you are, Pam. You'll have to unmute yourself. if you're ready. This is the first time I've tried this. Oh, Pam took her hand down. So maybe.
You can also throw it in the Q&A if you don't want to speak. I understand.
Right. Well, thank you for letting us try a new feature. That was pretty fun. So yeah, some people sound like they're kind of interested in hearing more about the indoor options, and another person's more interested in hearing about the camping options. So whichever of you would like to talk about that, or one or the other.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. This route is possible to do either or both, like a combination of camping and hotels. There are many more campgrounds on the Vancouver Island side of things. There's camping is a little like more logistically possible on Vancouver Island. When you get onto the mainland, there's only 2 campgrounds that I'm aware of that allow tent camping on the mainland. And one is right after that first ferry in the town of Tsawwassen. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And then there's one in North Vancouver, but it's like, I think it's like 80 or 90 miles between those 2 campgrounds. So like it's possible, but it'd be quite a long day. And so it's it's more recommended to probably stay in a hotel at least once or twice when you're on the mainland, so you can really take it all in. And then there's lots of hotels on this route. Hotels like Josh was stayed in a hotel every night. Hotels, inns, and then of course there's also like Airbnbs and private rentals and stuff like that too, that I didn't even really look into that whole side of things. So very, very possible to do this route indoors if you want to do it that way.
It is worth noting that like the lodging in Vancouver is pretty expensive. Very expensive city. It's worth it. I mean, I stayed at a hostel to kind of save a bit of funds and meet some other people. But even there's private rooms at hostels, so you can do that. But if you're going to plan to stay in Vancouver, which you should do because it's one of the highlights of the trip, so many things to do, it's just going to be a little expensive. So be ready for that.
Awesome. So Sally and Roger both have similar questions about when is the best time of year to ride the route to try to avoid the rain, or maybe the hot times. Do you guys have recommendations?
Yes. On our website, we recommend, I said between late spring and early fall, which is typically early May to September. So like for the most part, like the summer season. And Josh wrote it in June. Is that right? When you were out there, Josh? In June?
Yep, mid-June, early mid-June.
Yeah, and like your weather was pretty great, right?
Really couldn't have been much better. It was high 50s to low 70s. Since you're coastal, that keeps everything pretty temperate and doesn't bring a lot of temperature swings. So that was a really good time to go.
Yeah. I don't think Vancouver has like very extreme heat in the summer. I mean, maybe some hotter days, but it's a pretty, it's close enough to the ocean that I think the ocean kind of regulates the temperature. And so there is one thing to be aware of is there are some portions of the route that can be muddy when they're wet, or even partially flooded during kind of like the rainier seasons. But that would be like earlier in the spring when we're not really recommending to ride the route anyways, or like in kind of the wintry months. But just kind of something to be aware of. But Josh did not encounter any flooding when he was out there. So there's some low spots on the mainland side where it can get a little, it's like a boggy area, like wetlands, and that area can get a little flooded. But in the summer months, I don't think that's an issue along the trails there.
There were particular sections Amy had pointed out to me to check to see if they were muddy just because of that lowland area. And most of the ones later we identified, there were some pretty easy reroutes around if they were very muddy for like paved options. So, it's a bummer to not get to ride them. They were usually places that were like parks and wooded, and they were really pretty and quiet. But you don't have to go way out of your way if those things get flooded or muddy. It's pretty simple reroute.
So Larry is curious as to what wildlife you saw and if you carried bear spray, or if bear spray is recommended to carry.
I actually didn't see a ton of wildlife. I think when I was going through, that area was decently busy because it is part of like the Trans-Canada Trail. So I did see quite a few bike packers, and people like to do the Sunshine Coast out there. So there were other people out there. So I think that kind of kept the wildlife away. I did see the orca, which was extremely special. First whale ever, was really nice. But otherwise, when it comes to bear spray, that is a really, really good question, because there is only one small area where I heard people recommending bringing bear spray. Um, if you're going to be camping around the Lake Cowichan area on the Cowichan Valley Trail, on the section between Lake Cowichan and Langford, that 45, 50-mile section, that's probably some of the best camping on the whole route, but there are black bears there. So definitely want to have bear spray. What makes it kind of weird is it's the only place on the whole route where you need it. So you would want to look into maybe renting a bear spray canister, or if you bring it, you're going to have to carry it the whole route for that one section. If you're flying in, that makes it a little bit more logistically difficult. But definitely would recommend that. And you'll be staying at a campground. There should be bear boxes and other things there to keep it safe. But that is the one section where that's needed. Otherwise, it's not a concern.
If you're going in the counterclockwise direction, starting Victoria, you can like ride without bear spray pretty much the whole trip until you get to Duncan, or maybe in Lake Cowichan you can buy bear spray too, but you should be able to buy bear spray in the little town of Duncan, and then you could just carry it for like the last day or two, so you're not carrying extra weight for the whole trip while you're riding through the city.
And if people aren't camping in the area, do you still recommend to just carry it on the bike just in case?
Definitely never a bad idea to carry it. Living here up in Montana, like we're in grizzly country, when I go on my local run a half mile from my front door, I have to carry bear spray out here. But I always hesitate to say you don't need it. It's never a bad idea to have it. But when I went end to end, I felt pretty comfortable. And most of the people that were recommending the bear spray were asking if I was camping. Like that was always the first question. Oh, are you going to camp up there? Oh, you're not? Okay, you'll be fine. But yeah, everyone has their own kind of risk tolerance and everything. So something to look into. But especially if you're camping, I would bring bear spray. Absolutely.
Awesome. So I'm actually going to share a helpful Be Bear Aware link in the chat. I just need to go copy it. But Lynn is curious, what does an average day look like? Like longest day in terms of mileage, shortest day? Like, is there a recommendation? Yeah, any ideas around that?
Yeah, so in terms of my logistics, I was trying to be picky about it in the sense of days when I was going to be in the major cities like Victoria or Vancouver. I wanted really short days around them. So I could, get in. When I got into Vancouver, I only biked maybe 30 miles. So that allowed me to get in the middle, like in the afternoon, and spend most of the day there. And then the second day was only 25 miles and a ferry ride. So I could hang out around and walk around the city in the morning and then move out. I wasn't able to make it work to stay in a town more than one night or like do a layover day, which you should do. You should do at least a layover day in Victoria and at least a layover day in Vancouver. But my average mileage was mostly in the 40 to 50 range. I mentioned it a big day. I had one day that was about 80 miles just because I like to do big days. You super don't have to do that. But that was just a really fun time for me because that was a section that looked like lots of country roads, which is my favorite kind of riding on the Cowichan Valley Trail. That was a personal choice. But I did it in 7 days. And some of my days were quite short, 30, 25 miles, a few of those. I had a 55-mile day, the 80-plus-mile day. But like we said, this route is best done on the low and slow side. You can easily do only 30 to 40 miles a day. You'll make it where you need to go. You'll see a lot of things, and you get to really soak up the culture there.
I love it. Maybe that's where I'll take my parents on their next bike trip. We'll see.
It's quite a step up from the Katy Trail, so I don't know.
You think so? Well,
Yeah,
they're
it's quite a step
ready.
up.
They're ready.
Okay.
They were amazed at how much they could do in a day. So, Well, thank you, everybody. We don't have any more questions in the Q&A. I don't see other hands raised accidentally or on purpose. And so feel free to put any last questions in the chat while I talk. But mostly I just want to say thank you to Amy. Thank you to Josh for your work on this route. It's been incredible. Thank you for presenting. And thank you to everyone who showed up, who supported this route. The reason that we are able to give this route away for free is due to the support of our members and our donors. So it's because of you that we're able to do this. Giving it away for free increases the accessibility of this route so that more people ride it in 2026 as part of our big 50th anniversary. So just very exciting that we were able to do this. Thank you all so much. And we hope that you can continue to support the organization, go ride the route, tell us how it was. And I put some helpful links in the chat so you can access that route more easily so that you have additional information about it. And remember, through our store, you can download or get access to that route for free. So thank you again. And it looks like we do have 2 more questions just to wrap us up. Wendy asks, did you pre-book your hotels?
Yeah, I did 1 week before I left. So not super far ahead of time, but I had no problem finding affordable hotels. Again, Vancouver was expensive, but everywhere else I was able to find less expensive places. And I stayed, I think there was no, it was all local places. So there's obviously chains available, but I was able to stay in like local places. One bed and breakfast, which was the first time I'd stayed in a bed and breakfast, and I felt very fancy. But had a great time with that. When you walk in the room and there's a bathrobe on the bed, you know you've made it. So that was a really nice experience. But otherwise, it's all local places. Ate at almost all local places. Had to do McDonald's one day because of an early start. Otherwise, again, diversity of food, diversity of places. It's all local stuff. So anyways, I pre-booked, but not very far ahead of time. So I think you could do this trip by just showing up and saying, do you have a room? I wouldn't recommend it, but you probably could.
Some people love to live by the seat of their pants and others are planners. I think I know maybe which Josh is. Okay, so bike security. In the city, are locks a good idea? What kind of lock? Do we have a recommendation on that at all?
Yeah, I would definitely bring a lock. Just because you're going through really urban places, especially like Victoria and Vancouver. I'm not keyed into the local kind of like bike culture, so I don't know if bike theft there is a big deal. There were so many people on bikes in both cities, but definitely just being around urban places, good to have a bike lock. I usually use a chain lock. That's my personal preference that have those like Kevlar sheaths on them. I actually forgot my bike lock, and I realized that when I got to Washington. So I had to buy one. So instead of my nice lightweight bike lock, I carried a 7-pound chain lock on the whole trip. So there went my weight savings for going end to end, which that was overkill, but probably a simple U-lock, or there's those ones that fold up and like attach to your water bottle bosses on your bike. That's probably the best, but a chain lock was really good.
Thanks. Yeah, you never know, regardless of whether you're in urban areas or in more rural areas. It's just nice to know that your stuff is slightly more secure than it could be. The cost of ferries, I know we mentioned that it wasn't a huge cost, but Josh, do you remember what you paid?
Yeah, I want to say the BC ferries were probably 15 to 20 Canadian, so 10 to 12-ish USD. And you can get them ahead of time online. The website makes it sound like they're selling out of tickets all the time, and it makes you kind of stressed out. So I tried the online reservation and I tried just showing up. Both worked fine. They're not going to run out of room. Those things are so big. So really inexpensive. And then the ferry I took into Canada and then back into the US. That one was maybe in the $40 range. So none of it's really all that expensive. Pretty affordable in terms of ferries.
Awesome. I would just like to shout out Stephen Richards, who was a longtime rider and life member since 2013. He made a huge dent in our last campaign to help fund these new routes, and he helped raise $5,000 by October 1st. So thanks to all of our donors. Thanks to Steve. Really appreciate everyone who participated in the campaign. Don asks, is there anywhere that all accommodations are listed? So maybe Amy, you could talk about the service listings on our routes.
Yes. On the Ride with GPS map, all of the services, including hotels, campgrounds, like even like libraries, some restaurants and stuff like that, those are all shown as like points of interest on the Ride with GPS map. So you can look for the icon. If you're looking for lodging, you look for the little, like icon of a bed and click on them, and then it'll say the name, the phone number, address, and that's where you can find the services.
Awesome. One last question in the chat. Did the campgrounds have hiker biker sites?
I don't believe they had designated hiker biker sites. Since I didn't camp, I didn't get a close look at all the campgrounds. So I'm not honestly sure. Maybe Amy, you maybe learned about that?
There's so many campgrounds on this route, especially on the Vancouver Island side, that I mean, they're all different. Some of them do. I'm not recalling any specifically that offer hiker biker sites, but some of them might. I'm honestly not sure. There's so many to keep track of. So might be something worth looking into, because biking is so popular out there that I'm sure you're not the first person who's asked.
Yeah, and if anyone on this call goes and rides the route, and you can always provide feedback to us through our route feedback form on the website.
I mean, from my experience doing guided trip logistics for adventure cycling, the Parks Canada reservation system, they mean serious business. So I would probably, maybe if it's even the night before or the morning of, I would probably try to get on the Parks Canada website and get the reservation in. They run a tight ship on their campgrounds up there. So I'd probably do that route.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Amy, Josh. We're at time. Yeah, thank you for everybody for participating. I hope you go ride this route. I'm excited about it, and I hope you are too. Thank you so much. We'll see you later.